Hello and good evening, everybody. Today is May 20th, 2019. My name is Derek, and in this video, a pretty interesting topic, as far as I'm concerned anyway. Just yesterday, in a link to a video that you can find in your description below this video, I did a video on the Eclipse crucifixion code and how this appears to apply to celebrities and the dates on which they die. Of course, in that video, I also talked about how, this code is also present in our own lives. But I was able to link each of these deaths to the dates of total solar eclipses, which appear to be extremely significant to the events we see playing out in our reality and in our mainstream media. So after making that video yesterday, checking the news this morning, and one of the top stories was about the death of a marathon runner who collapsed during the Cleveland Marathon. And what this story kind of reminds me of is a little bit about the incident with Zion Williamson and Jim Boeheim, where Zion Williamson tore his shoe the same day that Jim Boeheim hit a pedestrian on the freeway. And, of course, Zion Williamson in Gematria summoned to 191 and 187. And later that night, we had the story of James Arthur Boeheim, whose name sums to 191, killing a man named Jorge Jimenez. And when this is spelled correctly, it sums to, what was it? Jimenez. This is how you spell it, guys. Sorry about that. Jorge Jimenez sums to 187, which was the reverse value of Zion Williamson. And here we have a story where a basketball team, the NBA's Cleveland Cavaliers, hired an assistant coach. And this happened on the same day that this woman passed away during the Cleveland Marathon. And you might be wondering how these stories could possibly be connected, and I assure you they are. If you haven't seen my video on the Zion Williamson incident, please do. That thing was all connected to Syracuse, even L. Frank Baum, the author of The Wizard of Oz, who was from Syracuse. And then that night, the coach of Syracuse hit a man on the interstate, killing him. So we'll talk more about my theories on what might be happening here towards the end of the video, but first I want to talk about the numeric connections. So in my blog post, I linked to this CNN article, which discusses how Taylor Ceepo, a student who recently graduated from Walsh University in Ohio, died during the Cleveland Marathon. Approximately 1 mile from the finish line is when she collapsed. And here's the story talking about yesterday's hiring of J.B. Bickerstaff. Now, granted, this published date does say this morning, but rest assured, Bickerstaff was announced as the coach yesterday. And he's not going to be the team's head coach, just the associate head coach. So, somehow, some way, the world of sports, the reality that we see in the mainstream media, merging together numerically. So let's talk about this and how it's related to the Eclipse crucifixion code, which has everything to do with the dates on which total solar eclipses occur. So let's begin with the gematria of J.B. Bickerstaff. What we need to understand is that his full name is John Blair Bickerstaff. In the language of gematria, the ancient practice of coding numbers into words, here we're looking at the 4 base methods on your screen. The alphabetic order, the most simple, where the alphabet is simply numbered 1 through 26. We then have the reduction method, also known as Pythagorean gematria. This method uses the rules of numerology to reduce each double-digit number to a single digit. Both methods can then be reversed for complementary methods, But check out in reduction, John Blair Bickerstaff has a value of 90 and 126 in reverse. The word marathon also has this same value, 90 in the alphabetic order and 126 with the alphabetic order reversed. Another cipher I teach in every video is Jewish Gematria. This is based on the Latin alphabet, structured more closely to ancient Hebrew Gematria, Greek isopsephy, a cipher that produces much larger numbers. And look at the word marathon in Jewish Gematria. So not only does J.B. Bickerstaff have matching name Gematria with the word marathon, but he was born on March 10th, the date written 3/10. And marathon equals 310 in Jewish Gematria. As far as the 36 in marathon, consider that the word cavaliers, also summing to 36, notice this word shares a 90 with both Bickerstaff and marathon as well. Now, this is something I don't generally condone, but there is one more connection between these two people's names. Using the standard alphabetic order, John Blair Bickerstaff equals 189. The name Taylor Ceepo, the woman who passed away after collapsing in the marathon, sums to 135 and 54. Now, if you add these two numbers together, you get 189. So that sticks out for sure. Bickerstaff was born in the year 79. The number 79 is a prime number. Notice how it's the 22nd prime. And this is interesting because everywhere you look, the stories about Taylor Ceepo, everything mentions that she's a 22-year-old. Or virtually every headline. And just think about the name Bickerstaff here in this numeric riddle involving a coach. Isn't that kind of 50% of what an NBA coach does is bicker with the staff of refs on the court, right? I mean, I don't know what's up with this reality, but it's a funny one, that's for sure. So here's the other interesting connection between Bickerstaff and Taylor Ceepo. Notice how assistant coach in these reduction methods sums to 44 and 91. Well, again, pay attention to the alphabetic order. The name Taylor equals 91. Her last name, Ceepo, sums to 44. And what makes this extremely interesting is that if you measure from the most recent total solar eclipse to have occurred, which to this date is still the 2017 American total solar eclipse. Again, this information all verifiable. The last eclipse was August 21st, 2017. Measuring from that date to the date of the marathon, we find it was exactly a span of 91 weeks. Like the gematria of Taylor and assistant coach. Now, the next total solar eclipse falls on July 2nd of 2019, this year. And if you measure from that date to the date that Taylor Ceepo died, we get exactly 44 days. Assistant coach, 44. Ceepo, 44. And by the way, 44 is that number associated with kill, which sums to 44 in that same method. So there's more to uncover here. If you look up Cleveland's date of incorporation, and something I failed to mention, which I should have mentioned earlier in the video, Ceepo recently graduated from Walsh University, probably just this past month. And Walsh University has a sports mascot of the Cavaliers. So on the same day that she passes away, the Cavaliers hire the new coach. Now, if you look up Cleveland, you'll see that the date that they were incorporated as a city was March 6th of 1836. And I'm pretty consistent in this. It's usually the city's incorporation date that you're looking at when measuring. I never looked at the founded or village dates. So this is interesting. March 6th, 1836. Well, think about how most of the world would write this date. The 6th of March would be 6/3, and in the year 36. Yesterday's date numerology, May 19th, 2019, had numerology of both 63 and 36. Just like the date that Cleveland was incorporated. And then, of course, furthermore, Cavaliers equals 63 in reverse reduction and 36 in standard reduction. Cavaliers also equals 153. These are the same numbers found in the value of May 19th. So May 19th, the date that had 63 numerology, also has double gematria of 63 in our standard reduction methods. Remember the word marathon also, 36. Ceepo was a graduate of Walsh University. Check out how Walsh also gives us a 63 in the alphabetic order. And then a couple of news outlets quoted one of her friends saying that she was extremely fit. And they put this in quotes in the headline, for instance, on the Daily Mail. And look at the value of extremely fit. 63 and 63 in both reduction methods. Also notice the 162 in ordinal. I think this is the value of Taylor Ceepo in reverse. So, well, I guess we'll get into the theories again later in a little bit. Another thing worth mentioning is that if you convert this measurement to weeks, her death was 6 weeks and 3 days before the eclipse. And how about the Cleveland Cavaliers basketball team? In the year 2019, look at their win-loss record. 19 and 63. Really? 19 and 63, 63 losses? If I recall correctly, maybe Zach even predicted this win and loss total for them this year. I can't remember. So they lost 63 games this year. This means they won 19 games. And this brings us to our next number that ties this riddle together. Taylor Ceepo, her last name summing to 19 in reverse reduction. In that same method, assistant head coach J.B. Bickerstaff's new role also summing to 109. Bickerstaff was fired as the coach of the Grizzlies on April 11th. And if you measure from April 11th to the date of this hiring, it was a span of 1 month and 9 days. So here on the 19th day of May in the year 19, this graduate from Walsh, which, by the way, does have 19 gematria in septenary, also 1019 in Jewish, she died during the Cleveland, Ohio Marathon, also giving us a 109. And what really trips me out about this story is the picture that the mainstream media is using. Look what number she's wearing in her college soccer uniform. Number 19. How about that? 19, remember from yesterday's video, 19, the Hebrew gematria of the word kill in reduction. But what's so significant about the number 19 is how it's related to astronomy. The Metonic Cycle, something which, of course, we weren't taught in public school, but we definitely should have been, It's a period of 19 years that syncs up almost exactly with 235 lunar phases. And this appears to be the most significant cycle of time that's observed by the occultists, so to speak, with knowledge about our geometric universe. So there's 19 years in this Metonic cycle. And what really popped out at me is that Metonic cycle, in English Gematria, this being the cipher on your left side of the screen, which uses the current 26-letter alphabet instead of the Latin order, Metonic cycle sums to 1,108, which is the same as Cleveland Marathon. 1,108 in Jewish Gematria. Of course, the number 19 was attributed in Greek isopsephy to both the moon and time. Time is not what it would be if it weren't for the moon, of course. So moon has a value of 19, time 1,090, also 109. The 19th prime number is 67, and the other word for moon in Greek equals 67. The word female, by the way, equaling 67. And I do believe this is intentional, since it's the female's menstrual cycle that's synced up closely with the moon and the lunar phases. And the reason Greek is especially important here, we're usually looking at English Gematria, but occasionally we'll take a glance at Greek. And that's because the Metonic cycle is named for a Greek astronomer named Meton. And the name Meton equals 67, the 19th prime number. And another interesting detail from this news story, I saw this detail in multiple articles, not just on CNN, but university hospitals treated about 60, 70 to 70 people at the marathon. And, this story says it was 80 degrees. That's not that hot. I think it has more to do with people running a marathon. This is just standard. I mean, if you get thousands of people running a marathon, some of them are going to need medical treatment. But this article here also said 60 to 70 marathoners. And this one even said 70 degrees, so even more fair. 67 is a number that we see associated with death also. Blood sacrifice, 67. Human sacrifice, 67. Even moon sacrifice, 67. I don't know if that's relevant. But as far as the gematria of both blood sacrifice and human sacrifice being 67, both of these phrases also sum to 86 in reverse, 86 being slang for offing or getting rid of. And this ties back into the assistant coach hired yesterday, J.B. Bickerstaff, 86 in that same method. One more interesting look, we talked about Metonic cycle, right? And how I noticed the overlapping 1108 gematria with Cleveland Marathon. Well, there's a couple more connections here. Metonic cycle sums to 62, just like Cleveland, Ohio, 62. And remember, Cleveland equals 33. It's the largest city in the United States that has 33 gematria, this being the value of Eclipse. Also, assistant head coach has this 62 value as well. But one more look at Metonic cycle and the prime number relationships. So Metonic cycle has ordinal values of 127 and 197. Both of these are prime numbers, the 31st and 45th. I often talk about, with some people, how the Green Bay Packers won Super Bowls 31 and 45, their first Super Bowls since the first two. And I believe there's a little Saturnian Metonic cycle riddle with the Green Bay Packers, but that's for a totally different time. But anyway, this is significant, 31 and 45, these prime numbers. In our large number ciphers, the word marathon sums to 310 and 450, right? Like 31 and 45. And we talked about how J.B. Bickerstaff was born on March 10th, or 3/10. And this is something I don't really like to do too often because it's not very scientific. But look at this. Cleveland Cavaliers assistant head coach J.B. Bickerstaff equals 450 in the alphabetic order. Just like Marathon 450 and his birthday is 310. It just piles on top of each other. It's so bizarre. Now, if we actually look at Bickerstaff's age on the date of this event, you'll notice that he was 40 years and 70 days. Of course, 47, the value of total eclipse. The word time, summing to 47. The number of degrees the sun travels between the tropics. Ohio, the state where this all occurred, sums to 47. So, that's pretty much all I have on the numerology of the actual death. I had a feeling someone was going to say that she might be transgendered. You guys crack me up. I mean, she was a marathon runner, right? Pretty athletic. Played a lot of soccer. But I don't agree. So, as far as the reality about, what's going on and what we're actually decoding, of course, for, a long time, well over a year that I was doing these videos, I called everything murder by numbers. And the more I look at this stuff and the closer these things happen to my own personal life, I've begun to accept that a lot of what we're decoding is not Masonic ritual. I think some of it is. It certainly appears that some people are being murdered by this code, but I don't know that. Again, that's just me throwing some conjecture out there and, saying what I don't truly know. And again, I think it happens, but I think a story like this, where someone collapses during a marathon, I mean, I don't think you can convince me that this was a murder. I wouldn't buy it. So many things would have to go right. I mean, first of all, somehow she was assigned the number 19, right? Which just ties perfectly into all of this. So that would have to go way back. And then also they would have to know that she'd run a marathon, later on in several years, and this particular marathon. And how could you expect that of somebody, That's something that someone makes a decision and a commitment to. So, and if they just randomly picked somebody, would they just pick them off the path in the marathon? Of course not. Did someone poison her days ahead of time and then the poison took effect during the race? These things I don't really believe because I can't conjure up any way in my head to pull that kind of thing off. And based on what I've seen in this story, what I've seen in my real life, I think there's something a lot deeper going on here. And in that video about Zion Williamson and Jorge Jimenez, I talked about how I thought it was possible that this elite class, which runs our government, our political scene, our hospitals, our news medias, certainly they have access to a very large database of people's names, people's birth dates, things like that. And if it's true that we are living in organic matrix, a divine matrix, which I don't feel like I believe in, I feel like I absolutely am positive we're living in something of a structured reality, whether you want to call it a simulation, a computer, whatever you want to say. That's definitely true. So is there a way to understand this matrix well enough that you can even forecast future events? Or instead, is there time travel going on? Or are we just seeing natural alignments occurring by the numbers like this? One of my developing theories, and granted I have many theories, that's why I have a YouTube channel. But if it's true that they have access to these databases and they are able to actually see and understand when tragedies will naturally occur. So, did they know that this woman would die, or a woman with her gematria, during the Cleveland Marathon, and then organize some sort of ritual behind the scenes to ensure that J.B. Bickerstaff was hired for the Cleveland Cavaliers? What's going on here? Is this, pointing at knowledge that they hold deep within these secret societies, that they are exhibiting to the rest of the world in ways that only those with knowledge would understand? To me, that seems that absolutely could be the case. The question truly comes down to, what level are human beings aware of what's going on? Is it that they know everything and that they're organizing all of this by the numbers? If so, it's got to be a little time-consuming. It's got to be painstaking. And as far as actually killing someone in relation to the ritual, what's the point of that, Why would that be worth all the effort and risk? So I definitely believe there's an organic element to this. Whether or not the Cavaliers hiring J.B. Bickerstaff was related, I believe it was, but I guess that's debatable. And you could probably make a case that this woman was killed, but I think you would have to really do a lot of work to convince me. I think there's, again, something else very deep going on about this reality we live in. Something that they've been hiding from us this entire time. Something that they do know about, but that they won't tell us about. But I definitely agree that we are in some sort of simulation. It's just impossible for that not to be true. The scientists who say, there's a 50% chance we're living in a simulation, or, it's more along the lines of what Elon Musk said, that it's literally 1 in billions. And I think it's even less than that. I think the chances are way slimmer. I was never a math teacher, guys. I actually don't have very deep knowledge about math or algebra. You have to understand, the math that I'm doing is as simple as mathematics get. I mean, you're taking the number that's underneath the letter and you're adding it. I mean, maybe I can do this a little faster in my head than most people, but I mean, there's really nothing special about my knowledge, about my mathematical skills. If there's anything unique about me, it would be my observational abilities and just the way I allow logic to kind of let me flow through these things. Because when I noticed the date numerology, when I noticed that the Walsh University mascot was a cavalier, I mean, you're only naturally going to think, what's going on with the Cleveland Cavaliers? So I looked up Cleveland Cavaliers news, and sure enough, they hired a guy in the same day. And I just took one look at his name gematria. I always look at their full name first. And right away it popped out, 9126. Marathon, 9126. His birthday, 310, like Marathon. A death at the Cleveland Marathon on the same day he's hired. I mean, this stuff is out of control. I mean, it's not like, those people who say you can do anything with numbers, those people are not speaking from a place of knowledge. That's a level of ignorance and an act of regurgitating conditioning that they've received from others. And perhaps that conditioning was intentional. Maybe they don't want us understanding this layer of our reality, because if this layer of our reality is true, think about the implications, right? That means that everything happens for a reason. that means we're all connected to this reality, each and every one of us, through our minds. Perhaps we have an ability to change reality with our minds. It is possible you were watching Zach Hubbard's videos. Zach Hubbard was a teacher. I don't know if he was in math or if he was just more of a grade school teacher. But again, I mean, it's nothing complex here. And I don't want people to, pretend that it is, because that's usually what scares people off. And, what I want to point out too is, speaking of conditioning, how many people in this country, the United States, will jump at the chance to tell you how bad they are at math? And have you ever thought about how strange that is? What's so difficult about basic addition? I mean, if you just take the time to practice it a little bit, you could be actually pretty decent at it. But, you throw some math out there, and it's hilarious to me how many people will quickly say, oh, I didn't know there would be a math quiz today, or, boy, I failed every math class, I got a D, haha. Like, it's hilarious, but it really is just simple mathematics, basic numerology, the simplest of the simple. All my videos, just these base ciphers, Latin gematria, and date numerologies. And man, if it's true that you can do anything with numbers and just make whatever story up you want, boy, I must be really good at it, because I'm able to do the same thing in every single video I make. Perhaps it's actually just occurring this way, and I believe it is. But regardless of what I believe is happening, the fact that this code is definitely in play and in existence, I believe truly needs to be better understood by humanity, or at least the masses in humanity, so we can better understand what our world is and how we can improve it. All right, thanks to everybody, whether you're watching live or archived. It's always appreciated. Please do like, share, and subscribe, as once again, this content is facing censorship through removal from YouTube's search algorithms. So anything you can do to help is appreciated. Peace, love, and God bless everyone. See ya!